So hey girl, thanks for coming by my place.
No worries. You mind if our girlfriend can come by with us?
Hell no. This is why I watch DC Rob.
Breaking news. I have important breaking news stories to bring to you from Medellín as well as Colombia, and a couple of stories that touch on the DR, Puerto Rico, and Mexico when it comes to housing. If you're not familiar with my channel, I report the news for Central and South America with a special attention on Medellín, Colombia, and Colombia as a whole. Let's jump into this first story right away. Watch out. Fake delivery drivers are stealing with scopolamine in Medellín. That's right. One more way they're giving it to you. Police warned of this new form of theft that has already claimed victims in the city and offer recommendations to avoid falling into the hands of these criminals. Authorities in Medellín have issued a serious warning to the public about a type of theft that is worrying law enforcement. These criminals pose as delivery drivers or even clients of a small and medium-sized business to gain access to homes or businesses, and once they're there, they use scopolamine to rob their victims. The Abur Valley police commander has detailed the modus operandi of these criminals. He explained that these criminals pose as utility companies or delivery drivers, and people innocently open their doors of their homes. This is when the crimes can occur. Another identified variant is that the individuals who gain the trust of the small business owners then supply them with the substance. Authorities have already identified several criminal organizations that engage in these types of thefts, specifically organizations that operate under the guise of home service providers and are stealing from homes in Medellín as well as other parts of the metropolitan area. In light of this alarming situation, the Metropolitan Police has urgently called on the public to take preventative measures and avoid becoming another victim. Do not allow strangers into your homes without thoroughly verifying their identity and the reason for their visit. Do not provide personal data to unknown or suspicious individuals. Always alert authorities of any strange movement or suspicious person in the vicinity of your home or business. This type of scopolamine-based robbery by false address agents adds to a broader criminal pattern in Medellín involving the use of toxic substances to commit thefts. Scopolamine has been a recurring tool in crimes reported in recent months in areas like El Centro, El Poblado, and Laureles, where victims are often approached in bars or even through dating apps. Recently, on July 2nd, 2025, the case of 3 Puerto Rican tourists who were scoped and robbed in the rented apartment in Medellín after contact initiated through a dating app became known. The victims reportedly losing consciousness after sharing drinks and upon awakening, discovered their cell phones, watches, jewelry, money, hearing aids, glasses, colognes, and personal documents such as passports and licenses has been stolen. Medellín Secretary of Security and Coexistence, Manuel Villamejia, has reiterated the authorities' commitment to dismantling these criminal networks and called on citizens to report any suspicious cases, emphasizing the importance of collaborating with the Attorney General's office and the police to strengthen judicial proceedings. Now, for the weed connoisseur that visits Colombia or Medellín, it ain't the same, guys. It ain't the same. You need to hear this story. Anybody hands you a pre-roll, you need to be aware. So check this story out. Caution. Experts warn cannabis is more toxic today than it was a decade ago. Science demonstrates the consequences that consuming cannabinoids during adolescence has on the brain. The Mexican state of Sinaloa is the setting for a bloody gird lord stories that characterize the Mexican corridor Mexico genre. It's also where a savvy gird trafficker, Rafael Caro, invented a cannabis cultivation technique in the late 1970s that made him a millionaire. Since then, plantations have increasingly proven highly effective at increasing the THC content of marijuana, thus making it more profitable. We're referring to its psychoactive compound, tetrahydrocannabinol, responsible for the feeling of being high, but also for undesirable side effects on the brain, especially when consumption begins at adolescence, addiction, psychotic disorders, and cognitive impairment, among others. All the energy the plant would otherwise dedicate to seed production is used to generate more resin, and therefore seeds have a higher THC content. Fernando Barantero, a researcher at the Faculty of Experimental Sciences at Francisco Victoria University and director of the Neurobiology of Addictive and Anxiety Disorders Research Group, explains specifically the amount of THC in the cannabis sativa varieties consumed today has tripled in the last decade. This clearly means that its consumption is more dangerous than it was 20 or 30 years ago. If the average proportion of THC in marijuana consumed in the streets was 4% back then, today it's 70% or more. This change, which has taken place in just a handful of years, is responsible for the low social perception of the risk of cannabis. Parents and grandparents of young people who use this GERD today are mistaken when they believe it's the same as joints they smoked in their home. On the contrary, they have nothing to do with it. To give you an idea, before the 1990s, the THC concentration in marijuana buds was less than 2%, down from 1% during the hippie wave of the 1970s. In the 1990s, it rose to 4%, and since then, it has increased by 212%, according to a study by the University of Colorado. Some strains have up to 35%. THC binds directly to CB1 cannabinoid receptors, which are widely distributed through the brain and neuronal structures that mediate important functions. That's why it produces so many different effects, says Barandero, who specializes in studies of this laboratory. The risk increased depending on the age, dose, or amount of THC and the duration of abuse. Continuous or not, Marina Diaz-Marza, president of the Spanish Society of Psychiatry and Mental Health, tells Sync. One of the most studied in recent years is that it multiplies by 9 the chances of developing a psychiatric disorder, be it bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, or self-infliction behavior. Depending on age, the younger the age, the worse the impact on the brain and the amount of THC consumed. So, if this is your thing and you happen to indulge, just know it's not the same as you had years ago. Also, know that something else could be put into it too. So if somebody gives you a pre-roll, be aware. This is an important warning. Okay, over to the DR, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. Deregulated tourism increases housing costs and affects hotels in the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. Complaints are also increasing in Puerto Rico over rising rents generated by unregulated short-term rental platforms. The lack of regulation of platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com is having a growing impact in countries like the Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. It is ending the competitiveness of the former hotel sector, driving up rental prices and reducing the state's ability to finance sustainable tourism. In the DR, where tourism accounts for more than 13% of GDP and employs nearly 600,000 people, the rise of informal tourist accommodations has described by the sector as unfair competition. While hotels comply with taxes, licenses, inspections, and health regulations, thousands of properties listed on digital platforms operate outside the tax authorities and without minimum standards. Diario Libre reported on June 26 that the Dominican Republic still lacks regulatory control over these platforms. Platforms are required to display the regulation number of each accommodation and share information with tax authorities. Furthermore, equitable taxation is required, with tourist taxes that bolster municipal budgets for urban maintenance, public transportation, and tourism infrastructure. In areas like the central area of the National District, the lack of regulation has led to a sustained rise in rental prices. Families and young professionals have been displaced to outlying neighborhoods where it is still possible to afford rents without competing with international tourists. Cities like Mexico City and Guadalajara, host of the 2026 World Cup, are facing a similar crisis. In videos released yesterday by Diario Libre, residents protest against tourist gentrification and the conversion of traditional homes into properties for visitors. You can't live in your own city anymore, they complain. In Puerto Rico, media outlets such as AFP and France 24 are collecting testimonials from displaced people. Gloria Cuevas, 68, lost her century-old home when it was converted into an Airbnb. It's a class war, she says, colonialism. It's suffocating us. This isn't just tourism, it's dispossession. Beyond the social tragedy, the phenomenon also impacts the quality of tourism services. The lack of affordable housing limits the hiring of essential personnel, cleaning, security, maintenance, and it weakens the economic system that sustains organized tourism. So there you go. One last quick one. This is over to Argentina. It has to do with tourists from the DR that have a tourist visa for the U.S. Argentina allows entry of Dominicans with U.S. tourist visa. Santo Domingo. Through Resolution 316, 2025, Argentine government has authorized citizens of the Dominican Republic and China to enter Argentina for tourism purposes if they hold a valid U.S. tourist visa. The measure aims to facilitate temporary visits without requiring a separate Argentine visa. According to the resolution, Dominican nationals may enter Argentina for a stay up to 90 days, as outlined in Article 24 of Law Number 25,871. The entry must be strictly for tourism, and the immigration status granted cannot be changed. However, visitors may apply for a one-time extension of their stay for another 90 days, subject to approval by the National Directorate of Immigration. The Argentine Embassy in the Dominican Republic supported this decision, recommending the policy as long as travelers enter exclusively for tourism. This move is expected to strengthen tourism ties while maintaining clear immigration controls. So there you go. You're up to date with the latest news, this time out of Medellín, Colombia as a whole, a little bit on the DR, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. Anyway, make sure you travel safe. If you're headed to Medellín, get your smile right, guys. Get your smile right. See my dentist, Dr. Carlos Maury. Contact information is in the description of all my videos. One last thing. I've gotten a couple of posts on my channel. I don't even know how they were posted, but it asked me a question. One was like information for my dentist, which is in the description of all my videos. And I can't remember what the other one was, but I'm unable to reply to it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what check mark it is. So if you sent me a message that way, just know I can't reply. It's always best to reach me at dcbornrobgroup@gmail.com, dcbornrobgroup@gmail.com, and I'll follow up with you there. I am still backed up, but I'm still at it. So thanks for the positive support. You guys are awesome. You are safe travels. Remember, you watch this channel, you travel safe. Thank you guys for watching. Remember, travel safe.
Thanks for hitting like. Thanks for hitting like. dcbornrob.
So hey girl, thanks for coming by my place.
No worries. You mind if our girlfriend can come by with us?
Hell no. This is why I watch DC Rob. Headed to Medellín, Colombia? See my guy Andres with Nomad Travel for safe airport pickups and drop-offs and tours. Contact information in the description below.